Something that comes up over and over in my cooking videos, especially the budget challenges, is questions and concerns about the costs of cooking itself, the gas and electricity required to cook the food. Now, I appreciate some of these comments you see on the screen are hyperbole or facetious, maybe even trolling, but some of them represent genuine concerns. Now, for various reasons, I haven't found it practically possible to set budgets for cooking fuel and energy. I have my hands full enough with handling the camera as well as the cooking. But what I could do is some empirical testing of how a few different cooking methods compare for cost. So that's the plan for this video. It's important to recognise that the details of my setup will not be the same as they are for everyone else. So let's lay out the facts. I'm with Octopus Energy. For gas, I'm currently paying a standing charge of 27.47 pence per day. This is just the service charge for the privilege of having gas available at my property. If I stopped using gas, but don't cancel the contract, I still pay 27.47 pence a day regardless. This translates to almost exactly £100 a year. Similarly, for electricity, I'm paying a standing charge of 47.95 pence a day. Again, regardless of usage or not, if I turn off all the appliances and sit here in the dark, I still pay 47.95 pence a day, which equates to almost exactly £175 a year. So £275 is flying away from me, regardless of anything I do, short of changing supplier, but honestly there probably aren't many fresh choices on the menu there. So anyway, that's the standing charge. It's money I have to spend. It's not the main topic of this video though, so enough said about that. For gas, I'm paying, at the time of making this video, 10.41 pence per kilowatt hour consumed. And electricity, I'm paying 33.52 pence per kilowatt hour consumed. There are only two things that use gas at Shrimp Cottage. One of them is the boiler, which does two things. It heats the house by circulating hot water through a number of radiators controlled by a timer so it isn't on all the time, and a thermostat so it stops adding heat if the house reaches the temperature set on the dial. It also heats the water stored in a big copper cylinder in one of the upstairs rooms. This heating is indirect. The boiler passes hot water through a heat exchanger coil inside the tank. The other thing that uses gas is the cooker, which we inherited from the previous owners of the house. The oven, grill and hob all use gas heat. That's it, so actually measuring the usage of any part of the gas appliances is as simple as turning all the other parts off, then taking a reading from the gas meter, which lives in a cabinet on the outside wall of the house, then using the appliance for a measured period of time, and then taking a second reading. A bit of a faff, but this has the distinct advantage of being 100% true to the billing cost, because I'm measuring usage using the same equipment that the gas supplier uses to measure my usage for billing. Measuring electric use isn't really possible by the same method as gas. Turning off every little thing in the house just to measure one thing just really isn't practical. But I have this little widget that I can plug in between the appliance and the supply, and it will give me a direct reading of kilowatt hours consumed. There's no guarantee this thing is calibrated the same as my electric meter that's used for supply billing, but I did a quick calibration test of my own using a fan heater of supposedly known rating, and it did seem to be right. So I feel fairly sure this thing is not going to be orders of magnitude out of calibration. It can be programmed with the price in order to give a direct reading of cost for usage, but I didn't bother with that as I want to do all of that in a spreadsheet anyway. Before we get to the measurements, a polite request. If you've got questions about any of the weird configuration or workings of any of the things I've so far described, or indeed other things I'm about to describe, you're probably not alone, so please check if there's a pinned comment under this video that already contains the answer you seek, especially if you're watching this more than a day or two after upload, just to save me the pain of trying to answer the same questions over and over. So here's a list of the things I measured, and just a note, I did these over the course of a few days so that it wasn't a complete waste of energy for me. When I put the oven on, I had something to cook, for example. Anyway, I measured the gas usage to run the oven at gas mark 6 for an hour with a family-sized casserole in a dish in there. I measured the amount of gas consumed in heating a litre of water on the largest burner in my largest saucepan with the lid on. I also measured the amount of gas used to continue heating that water, plus an additional 500 ml of cold water, and then onto the back burner to cook 150 grams of whole wheat spaghetti for about 8 minutes. And just for completeness, I measured the non-cooking uses of gas, the amount consumed to run the central heating for an hour, and the amount consumed to heat the hot water for an hour. Both from cold, so we're getting the hour with the greatest duty cycle. On the electricity usage, I measured a typical cycle of the electric toaster, the electric kettle boiling a litre of water from cold, the microwave also attempting to boil a litre of water from cold. I say attempting because it just didn't get there. More about that in a moment. And a typical short program on my combination pressure cooker to make some chicken stock. It's actually on the soup setting because that's the short one, 30 minutes notionally, but that's 30 minutes counting from after it gets up to temperature and pressure, so in reality more like 45 or 55 minutes of actual cooking and heating. So here are the results for gas, and there's a little bit of conversion necessary to convert the cubic meters measured by the gas meter into kilowatt hours, which are the billing unit. But I use the same calculation my supplier uses, which is printed on the bill. There's a factor to allow for expansion of the gas due to ambient conditions, and factors to convert it to calorific value and then to money. Running the oven for an hour on gas mark 6 cost me just over 15 pence, which was lower than I expected. The large burner on the hob cost 3 pence to boil a litre of water in about 7 minutes, so if I had that burner on full blast for an hour, not sure why I would, but if I did, it would cost me 24.4 pence. Combination use of the large burner to get the water going, then the medium-sized burner to keep it boiling, cost 8.3 pence for the pasta cooking session, which was nearly 23 minutes in total, so a whole hour of that sort of mixed usage on large and small burner would cost 23 pence. The villains in this story are the central heating, which costs about 79 pence an hour to run, and the hot water, which costs 42 pence an hour. That's where most of the money will have gone on this winter's frankly horrifying gas bill for me. And it wasn't even the coldest of winters, and I'm not in the coldest of houses in the coldest of locations, so it could have been worse. For electricity, the kettle cost about 4.5 pence to boil a litre of water, in 3 minutes 45. If I ran the kettle non-stop for an hour, again not sure why I would, but if I did, it would cost 70 pence. I tried to boil a litre of water in the microwave, but it cut out at 9.5 minutes. I think the evaporation and condensation of the water inside the cavity was then causing the microwave itself to heat up, and it shut off to protect itself. So the water only reached 88 Celsius, but it was a valid test of running the microwave at full power, so that 9 minutes 50 of use at full power costs 7 pence. If I used the microwave at full power for a whole hour, it would be 43 pence. The toaster, toasting 2 halves of a lovely forked muffin in 3 minutes and 50 seconds, cost 2.7 pence. So running the toaster for an hour, if I was somehow motivated to do that, would be 42 pence. And the pressure cooker consumed 0.3 kilowatt hours in the approximately 45 minutes that it ran, costing 10 pence to make a litre of delicious chicken stock. Now, whilst it might have been more scientific to measure how long it takes this device to boil a litre of water, that seems pretty pointless to me, as nobody would ever use this thing as a kettle. Now, I don't intend to draw very many conclusions from this brief set of exercises, although if you'd like me to drill down into any more realistic examples, such as cooking a Sunday roast or whatnot, let me know and I might make a follow-up on that. But there are just 1 or 2 things that sort of struck me. One was that simple test of boiling a litre of water. Obviously the microwave isn't the right way to do that. Maybe not even a fair test to ask it to do that, but even trying, it was more expensive than using the electric kettle, which shouldn't really be the case because the microwave literally puts the energy straight into the thing being heated. So I think it was maybe the losses from the prolonged heating time of such a large mass of water that caused the microwave to lose that thing. For smaller things, I imagine the microwave is probably more efficient. But cheaper than both of those things was the gas hob. Even though people say gas hobs are inefficient at delivering heat, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, the cheaper kilowatt-hour cost of gas more than compensates for the inefficient delivery of heat to the pan. And in the winter, when I'm heating the house to keep my own self warm, heat that escapes around the side of the pan and goes into the room isn't exactly wasted heat. It would be in the summer though, probably, because I'd open a window to keep cool. The pressure cooker is, I think, more efficient for making that litre of stock than making the stock in a pan on the stovetop. It would have needed at least an hour of simmering, for which I think we can compare the extended cost of the pasta cooking test. So the stock might have cost 23 pence or so to make on the gas hob, but only 10 pence, less than half the cost to make in the pressure cooker. And I suppose one sort of wildcard comparison that I feel I need to make, there isn't any version of fresh chicken stock you can buy ready-made for anything remotely close to 10 pence a litre, or for that matter 23 pence a litre if it was made in a pan on the gas stove. In fact, my chicken stock was cheaper than a stock cube, and I think a fair comparison for a litre of stock would actually be 2 stock cubes. So home cooking wins by a significant margin in that special case, and I suspect in the general case too, although of course the ingredients for making chicken stock are basically free, as I just diverted them momentarily on their way to the bin. But perhaps real-world comparisons of cost for home cooking versus restaurant versus takeaway versus ready meal versus anything else you can think of might be a thing to look at in another video later. So that's about it for this round of measurements. I think it's worth noting and reiterating that, of course, everything we've looked at today is based solely on the little bit of reality that I inhabit. And the numbers won't necessarily be the same for other people in other places. For example, if you have to prepay your energy use on a meter key, which is common in rental properties, the tariff will likely be more pricey than what we looked at here. And there are doubtless other ways your mileage might vary from mine, although it probably takes roughly the same energy for you to boil water as me, so you could multiply my measurements of kilowatt hours by your own tariff if you want the local answer without the legwork I've already done today. Nevertheless, I hope this has been an interesting little dip into comparative costs of running things. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.